Welcome, everyone. Okay, so wait. Well, I want to change the view. Just a second. Wait, let me. Okay, so here we are in Eurodea, and we're Siman 98 and Seif 2, and we're going to talk probably most of my time about Tam K'Ikkar, which is a big topic, and it's right here, and it comes up. So, I mean, we're not going to look at the Gemaras, but we're going to look at how it affects the halacha. So, I want to start with the tour, and maybe Ilana, you want to read? Ilana, you there? You want to read the first bit of the tour?
Sure. Wait, I'm sorry. Where am I reading from?
From Bet. Sorry, from Bet.
From Seif Bet. Okay, in the tour. Yeah.
In the tour.
Okay. Bein im nitarev there.
Yeah.
Okay. Bein im nitarev isur beheter min bemino kigon chelev letoch shuman. Bein min b'she'eno mino kigon chelev letoch grisin. Shiro b'shishim. Umihu piresh Rabenu Tam. Demin b'mino, kevan she'eno noten botam min haTorah, kevan she'eno noten botam min haTorah batel berov, ela shechachamim hitzrichu shishim. V'shelo b'mino, asur min haTorah ad shishim, ela she'en lo kin alav, ad shehebo kokach min ha'isur, ad shehe betoch kol arba beitzim min haheter kezayit min ha'isur. Ve'az chayav al kol kezayit uchazayit mimenu.
Okay. So first of all, you started off by saying, the tour started off by saying that whether it's min b'mino or min b'she'eno mino, it's shishim. Mm-hmm. And since that could sound like that's like the Doraita law, it then specified and says, well, wait a second, there's a machloket about this. There's some opinions about this. And Rabenu Tam, what does Rabenu Tam say?
That if it's min b'mino, where there's no issue of ta'am, then the deoraita, the bitul is berov. But Chachamim were stricter than that, and that didn't just allow bitul berov in the case of min b'mino, and said, no, for min b'mino, we need shishim. And if it's not b'mino, then we're stricter with min she'eno b'mino, then deoraita, it's asur. And no, sorry. Then doraita, it's asur ad shishim.
Min b'she'eno mino is doraita requiring. Now, there's the 60 that we said before at the beginning is doraita when it comes to min b'eno mino, like two different tastes. And when it's the same taste, then that din is only Rabbanan. And really, doraita, bare bone law would be rov, would be all you need is rov. But by 6, and they made a gezerah on that, basically atu eno mino. So it should be the same din as eno mino. But really, eno mino is we don't have a gezerah on eno mino. Eno mino, we're just left with the Doraita law, which also requires 60. And then Rabenu Tam said an additional point, which is when do you get punished? Right, when do you get malkot?
Only when the isur is sufficiently concentrated that for every 4 eggs worth or achilat pras of what's permitted, there's an olive's worth of the isur.
And how much do you have to eat to get that whipping?
Every time you eat a kazait, I think of the tarovet, you're right. Getting lashes.
Exactly. Perfect. All right. So now this is this din. This is, of course, not the only opinion. This is Rabenu Tam. You want to read on a little bit in the in the tour?
The nafkamina im nitarev min b'mino v'nishpach Be'anin, I forgot. Ba'inan she'en yocholim.
No, sorry, be'inyan.
Be'inyan, right? Kilu b'matzav she. Okay, yeah. Be'inyan she'en yocholim la'amod alav l'sha'aro. Im nitba'er l'sha'aro im nitba'er shaya rubo heter mutar. Kevan desfeka derabanan tolin lehakel. Ve'im lo nitba'er sherubo haya heter asur. Ve'im nitarev b'she'eno mino v'nishpach asur desfeka deoraita lechumra. Okay.
Right. So what's the first case?
The first case is two things are of the same mean mixed together, and then some of that mixture, before we can assess the quantities and know, is there bittul, before we can, or what's going on in terms of the ratios of the two things, before we can even assess that, some of it pours out, okay?
Right.
And we can't know, right? Be'inyan she'en yocholin lamod alav l'sharo im yiber she'ya rubo heter. So we can't tell if the majority was heter or asur or isur, because like some of it poured out. In that case, it's mutar, because it's a sveka, right? The sveka is that we don't know how much poured out, right? We don't know what the quantities were because some poured out, but it's a din dirabanan, and in sveka dirabanan we're mekel. And why is it a din dirabanan? Because
it's min b'mino.
It's min b'mino, right? Yes. Right, it's min b'mino, and the din deoraita for min b'mino is
rov. So
okay.
presuming we have a rov, as long as
Right.
we know for sure that we had a rov, then we don't know if we have 60. But anyway, 60 is only a rabbinic requirement,
Right.
So it's a suffix derabanan, because mid deoraita is batel already by rov. But if it's eno mino, then the 60. If we have a doubt whether we have 60, then we have a suffix deoraita. Because by eno mino, where the flavor is, we need, if we have a suffix about that, then it's a suffix deoraita. Because that's what we just learned. In the according to
it's not that like if we were confident that it had rov. I think it's that like it has to visibly have rov now, because that way we have something in front of us which we know for sure is midoraita kosher, and that we think there was plausibly shishim before it spilled. I think the idea is that now in front of us, and I think this is explicated by some, now in front of us there has to be minimally a rov.
I disagree with the Torah's language, right? He says you need be'er shahaya ruvo heter, right? Just the language itself sounds like it was rov beforehand.
Yeah, I'm not sure you have to go that far, Lexi. I mean,
I could look up the specific citation, but I'm pretty sure, I want to say the Shach says that explicitly.
Oh, perhaps, but I don't see in my mind. I don't see what the difference is because if we're 100% sure that we had a rov before, what do I care if half of it fell out? I mean, first of all, if half of it fell out, then I still have a rov, don't I? Because it fell out in the proportions that it mixed together.
I thought I had a rov before.
In other words, I'm going to say, Lexi, that's the same thing. If I had a rov before, then I have a rov now, because when it spilt out, I presumably spilt out from all of the mixture, not like from just the heter part. I spilled out from the mixture. So whatever ratio there was before, I still have.
You would say then what about shishim? Then that logic doesn't work.
No, because the piece that fell in, I see that piece. I see. In other words, I took that piece I have. That piece I took out. And now I'm just looking at the pot. And the quantity that I have is not 60 against it. No?
I mean, like, because, I mean, you could read this shot in different ways.
If I spilt out, whatever. I don't think it's such an important point. The point is you need to have rov. His point is to tell you that you can rely on the deraita law when there's a doubt about whether you're fulfilling the rabbinic law. That's his point.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
The significance of the spilling out is that like it adds some uncertainty because we don't know that it was spilled out in the same proportions as the total proportions, or what is the relevance?
No, I imagine the case like this: that a piece of the, let's say, pork falls into your pot, and then let's say in the process of removing that piece of pork, you knock over the pot and some of it spills out. And now you don't know if you have in the pot 60 against that piece of pork that you were pulling out. You were pulling that piece of pork out and inadvertently you knocked over the pot, and so now you have less than what you originally had. And you measure it, and lo and behold, it's 40 against it. And you say, well, a lot spilled out. Maybe there was 60 there when it fell in. And the fact that there's only 40 there now is because I knocked it over when I was taking the pork out. And I don't know. But for sure, I have in the pot, or I did have in the pot, majority against that piece of pork. See that? And that's the Lexi question.
But this goes to Seif Gimel. If
what?
This goes to the question that we'll pick up in Seif Gimel, but shouldn't I already, as soon as I eyeball the pot in order to take out the fatifa, I should know that it's whether it's 60 or not, right?
No, you shouldn't. No, the only way you could measure the pot would be like taking that piece out and measuring it in displacement of water, and then taking your soup and pouring it into graduated cylinders and measuring how much you have exactly. You can't just eyeball it. You can't eyeball 60. You have to measure 60. Unless your pot itself has graduated marks on it.
Sorry, my understanding of the tour is that we're talking about a case of min b'mino, and before you
about both cases.
Right. No, it says that's what we're discussing. Right?
You're right. I said
specifically about min b'mino, right?
Well, he talked about both. In the end, he said, and if it was not min b'mino, then we couldn't.
So then
do
it's
this.
A different case, right? But as it relates to the first one, my understanding was that it's spilled, and you're not able to tell like what's what. Like it's not like you're in the middle.
Well, but you know how much fell in. You know how much fell in.
Right. All you know is that it's a Rav. Rav fell in, and then they shouldn't.
You know that. So let's say, fine. Let's say a case like.
Wait a second.
Non-kosher potato soup fell into your kosher potato soup. So your non-kosher potato soup, it was a cup, and it fell in, and now some of the potato soup falls out, and you don't know if you have 60 against that original cup because you don't know how much fell out. But you do know that you have rove against whatever fell in originally, because when it fell in, it was only a cup against your whole soup.
But why are we? You just said like if we have 60, we should measure 60, but we don't have to measure rove. I mean, are we only saying we're not measuring?
No, you have to measure rove.
It's always min b'mino, and so you're not going to find it anyway. I mean, can we eyeball it or can we not eyeball it?
Well, rove is a lot easier to eyeball than 60.
Well, but how do you eyeball potato soup and potato soup?
No, but that's the point. You don't. That's the point. That's my example. Potato soup. You can't get it out. But when your 1 cup of potato soup fell in, that there was at least 2 cups of potato soup in the soup pot. So you know that you have rove. And you're about to measure, do I have 61 cups, right? If I have 61 cups of potato soup now, then I know that I have 60 versus the 1 cup that fell in. So I'm about to start measuring it, and I pour it into graduated cylinders, and lo and behold, it spills all over the floor. And now I continue measuring, and I don't get up to 60. And I say, well, maybe I had 60 just spilled on the floor.
Right, but by that logic, you could extend even further. We don't care about nishpach. Nishpach would just be a case amongst other, but assuming that you served it to your guests, right? Could they keep on eating it? Yes or no?
Yes, nishpach is not the only case. Right. If it was consumed by the dog or my guests or whomever, then that's also called out of this world. Right. And in Seif Gimel, we're going to talk about lifanenu, if it's still here, and I can't ascertain, but it's still in front of me. That's different. But here we're talking about a case where it's gone. It spilled onto the floor and absorbed into the dirt floor, or it got eaten by the dog. But if it's not lifanenu anymore. All right. I think that's clear enough. In other words, again, we don't know if we have enough potato soup, 60 against the treif potato soup. We don't know. But we do know that we have rove. So since rove is the actual law according to the Torah, we can say, well, we have min Torah, it's for sure kosher. Min Rabbanan, we have a suffix. And then we can apply the rule, suffix Rabbanan, lahakin.
Wait,
that's only if we can reasonably assume that we had 60.
I still want to go back to the measuring, right? Because like Lama'a say, if someone accidentally drops like a teaspoon of lard into my saucepan, right? I'm not throwing it out because I'm like, I know there are 60-ish in there, right? Like, so you seem
I
to
never
be...
saw, in all of my learning, I never saw anybody say you can just guess. I never saw that.
But like, who doesn't do that?
It's reasonable what you're saying. It's reasonable what you're saying. Again, eyeballing it, I wouldn't say I eyeball it. It looks about 60. If it looks like 100, maybe you could guess. Now, if there's for sure way more, that's
Wait,
one
you
thing.
think whenever it says Mesharinan b'shishim, they're talking about actually measuring it with?
Yes, I do. Yes.
No,
What else?
absolutely not.
Well, that's
No,
why I
else
was
they would
saying
give you a
Lama say nobody
mechanism.
ever does that, right? Like, so where do we get that gap? Is this just a mimetic tradition? We're all doing it wrong according to
Sharinan means measuring.
No, but they would give you a technique to measure it. You actually have to marry.
They do give you a technique to measure it.
How?
They talk about
they
do talk about measuring the about how much
put it in
water
the
it displaces.
See how it's displaced.
They do give you a technique. If you're measuring the thing itself, how much it displaces, then it's meaningless if you don't measure the other side of it, what it's going into. You can't just measure one and know that it's one cup and you don't know what the other one is. It wouldn't make sense. You have to measure both of them. Usually the cases where we have, why people don't measure. If you're asking me sociologically, first of all, most people are not experts in halakha. And secondly, in many cases, it's a huge pot and a very small amount. Like if a drop of milk, if a splatter of milk falls into your chicken soup, so maybe you don't have to measure because it's obvious that it's 100 to 1. It's maybe 200 to 1.
Right, but you literally just explained an example in which you don't have to literally measure, right?
If it's a tiny drop of milk, yes.
Where's your cutoff point? Which you say like, oh, now I don't have to measure, right? I mean, there should be a cutoff point for when you don't have to measure.
Somebody once said there's a fourth. There are four There's a 4 turim of the Shulchan Aruch, and there's a 5th tur of the Shulchan Aruch, and it's common sense. So if it's borderline, anywhere near borderline, then you have to measure it. And that's all I'm saying. I'm saying you cannot just say.
It's a Rabbanan to measure it. It's likua.
It's not always something Rabbanan. If it's pork, if it's lard, it's d'oraita. If it's pork or even non-kosher meat, it's d'oraita. So if it's for sure far away from 60, but I wouldn't say that you can eyeball exactly 60. Now, you can't say, oh, that's, you know what, that's 60. If you're sure it's like in the election, which we're about to have in Israel, there's been no election that's ever been decided by one vote. If it's one vote, you have to recount, and probably if you recount 3 times, you'll get 3 different results. But the point is, if there's a plethora of evidence that you have for sure much more than the amount that fell in, then you don't have to measure. But if it's anywhere in a range, let's say between 40 and 80, so you have to measure. And you pour out your soup into into some kind of measuring device. By the way, IKEA's pots actually have lines on them that say how many liters it is. So you could actually measure your pot.
Do they only do? Oh, I haven't seen that.
I have some pots like that I got at IKEA. Anyway, actually in Israel, when you buy a pot, it tells you it's a 2-liter pot, a 4-liter pot. So you kind of know how big your pot is. Okay, anyway, let's go to the Beit Yosef. So, Alan, you want to read?
Sure, where are we picking up?
In the Beit Yosef and Beit.
All right.
Well, actually, you know what? We'll skip the beginning. It's the first 2 lines you can skip. Mihu, start from there.
Okay. Umihu piresh Rabenu Tam. Tamim b'mino kevan she'ena natan tam min haTorah batal b'rav ela shechachamim hitzrichu shishim v'shelo b'mino asur min haTorah ad shishim ela she'en lokin alav v'chulei. Rashi piresh tamim b'mino lo batil klal afilu be'elef umim b'she'ena mino eno ela d'Rabbanan.
What does he mean by min b'she'eno mino ela d'Rabbanan?
Min b'mino.
Min b'she'eno mino eno ela d'Rabbanan.
The fact that min she'eno mino is batal b'shishim and not berov is only d'Rabbanan.
Exactly. And what's the din law according to the Torah?
The law is min be'eno mino batal berov.
Exactly. So Rashi holds, this is also a bit of a shocker here, unless you've seen it before. Rashi holds that min b'she'eno mino is batal berov. So that means your pork, your lard falls into your omelet, and you got majority omelet, minority lard, midiraita kosher.
Wait, Rav Nachum, is he saying that it's batal berov, or did that Tam K'Ikkar is not there, right? And therefore, if it has Tam, there's no mama show, then and it's just Tam, then it's batel no matter what, or not asur. Actually, batel would probably be the wrong term, right?
I think the idea is right that like he is talking about Tam K'Ikkar is derabanan, but then the question gets at.
I'm just explaining what Alan said. I'm agreeing with Alan.
Ends up being a ratio.
Alan said correct. I said Varashi piresh min b'mino lo batel klal. Right? It's not batel ever according to the Torah. Min b'mino, in other words, pea soup is usur entirely forever, no matter if you have 60 or 1,000. Umin b'she'eno mino, but pork into your pea soup, or let's say melted lard into your pea soup, eno el midrabanan. What's eno el midrabanan? And Alan correctly said that you need 60. The requirement of 60 is the Rabbanan. So then I asked, what's the requirement according to Torah? And he answered correctly, the majority. You go by the majority.
But do you see that in the Rashi? I'm not so sure.
Well, I don't, first of all, I don't have Rashi in front of me.
Yeah.
But
I just think because it's followed
I don't see
by
the question. I don't understand the question.
It's followed by he schemed the Sfarat Rabenu Tam, right? Where Rabenu Tam is talking about Tam K'Ikkar Doraita. So it would make sense.
I agree with you that it's related to Tam K'Ikkar Dorabanan. I'm just asking a simple question. What is the din according to the Torah?
Yeah, and it might just be as long as there's no mamash, it's mutar, right?
Oh, you're saying even more lenient than
more lenient than rov. Yeah,
I didn't understand. You're saying even more lenient than rov, that even if it's majority pork, you're saying even if it's majority pork, but it's all melted.
Exactly.
It's all melted. In other words, I have like 1 egg and 2 eggs worth of melted pork, and it all mixed together, and there's no pork that I can point to. Maybe it would be kosher. That's possible, but you'd have to find a very good proof for that, because I find it unlikely.
We talk about Mama Show as being a ratio, right? Like at least with like Rambam, obviously that's a disputed thing, but a lot of the ones we end up citing, Mama Show ends up being a ratio. So if we go by Mama Show as being actually like what is the like presence of the surfaces versus that there, then you could never have a situation like that.
I mean, in Rashi, in one place, I went down this rabbit hole.
I don't want to go down this rabbit hole.
Oh, we don't want to go down. Well, never mind. We'll put it on pause.
We have read not enough to. If we had a lot of extra time, we could go on down this question. Let us.
Joel, can you please send me the rabbit hole?
Let's just stick with the straight reading that Alan gave us. That if it's not, if we only have 2 possibilities, we have rov or shishim. Then if shishim is the Rabbanan, then the din d'oraita is rov. And maybe you're right. Maybe the din d'oraita is some other criteria that we've never seen before, or that we have seen before, but we don't see in our page in front of us. Yeah, Reuven, you want to say something?
The discussion was just very interesting. So I asked Joel if he could send me some resources about this rabbit hole he was talking about. I would love to take a look at it.
All right, so go on, Alan.
Great. בפרק כל הבשר, בסוף שמעתתה, טיפה חלב שנפלה לתוך חתיכה, פסק רש"י, דהלכה כרבי יהודה, דאמר מין במינו לא בטל.
So that's the source for min b'min is lo batel, even in a million. It's from Rabbi Yehuda, the Tana. Vehevi rayot.
Vehevi rayot l'durav. V'tosvot b'perek Yidinasha, Sastrit v'rav. So
Tosfot argues on Rashi and says, no, the halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda.
Right.
And therefore, the halacha is like the Torah said. Min b'mino is batal b'rov, and not that it's never batal.
Right. V'chein Pesach Shem Haran. So Ran agrees. Perak Batra, the Avodah Zarah, Gersinan Rav, Shmuel, the Amrei Tarvayu, Kol Yisurin Shabbatarab, B'minan B'mashu, Shelo B'minan B'noten Tam. Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish, the Amrei Tarvayu, Ben B'minan, Ben Shelo B'minan B'noten Tam, Chutz Metevel V'yen Nesach.
So here we have an argument between well, it's not really between, because Rav and Shmuel are first generation and Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish are second generation. But Rav and Shmuel say that Kol Yisurin Shabbatorah b'minan b'mashu, like Rashi said, v'shelo b'minan b'noten tam. And if it's not, if it's not, how do you say? If it's not the same species, they're different types. Then, so it's like, let's say, pork and beef, then it's b'noten tam. But Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Rish Lakish said, Bein b'minan, bein shelo b'minan b'noten tam. It's always 60. There's no such thing as never being gradual. It's always 60. Chutz me certain examples. So go on.
Pesach Arash. Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish.
Chutz me, what are the certain examples? Tevel v'yayin nesek. Why tevel? Tevel. Why is tevel never batel? Because you could always take the truma. And why is yayin nesek never batel? Or because it's the chumrah of avodah zarah.
Mishnah says so. Yeah.
Okay. Upasach harosh.
Pesach Arash. Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish. So he also thinks whether it's min b'mino or min b'sheinu mino, batal b'shishin.
You always need 60. You always need 60. In other words, we're basically trying to show here that we're not taking the stricture of Rashi that says min b'mino is never batal. So we go, which would be like going like Rav and Shmuel. Instead, we go like Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish, and we say min. We go like Rish Lakish and Rav Yochanan that say min be. Bin Mamino, is also batal b'shishim. At least. Certainly it's batal b'something and it's batal b'shishim. So just read on.
Okay. The Apapi Sharif Pesach Rabbi Shmuel. Farkat V'Varash V'Aran Shechazar Bo. Okay.
So the halacha is like Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, and even though the Rif seems to say different, he changed his mind. Go on.
The Rambam, the paragraph the Melachot Asirot, the Katabti Lashonon B'Siman Zeh. They quoted it way up on the page. The Chem Pesach Rashba, the Torah Bayit, the Katav Rivash, the Tshuva Timan Tafmentat, Shekach Hiskim Kol Acharanim, the Katav Ram, the Paragid Nasha, Min V'Mino Afilu Nitarev Gufo Medoraita, the Rava Batil, Uchad Amar Rava, the Parak Torovet. All
right, skip ahead. Wait a second. Let's skip ahead. I want to skip down now to, so basically that first part, he was just showing that that the halacha is like Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish, that min b'mino is sometimes batel b'shishim.
Not like Rashi.
Yes. Not like Rashi. Now I want you to skip down to where it says V'zeh Lashon Harosh.
Okay, I'm there.
So go ahead.
Folks, a second. V'zeh Lashon Harosh.
It's like a big paragraph skipping down.
Upiyesh Rabenu Tam, the Tam K'Ikkar b'min b'she'ino mina deoraita.
So now we're talking about the other side. Now we're talking about where it's not min b'mino, but it's min b'she'eno mino. So this is like the pork flavor in your omelet, the lard, let's say, in your omelet. So that, he says, Tam K'Ikkar min b'she'eno mino d'oraita.
Right. This is now a chumrah of Rabenu Tam.
Right. Well, we didn't actually talk about it, but we didn't see it. But Rashi holds, in addition to holding that min b'mino is always aser, which is like a chumrah, he also holds a kula, which is that min b'she'eno mino, the requirement of 60, well, like we saw before, is only rabbinic, which is another way of saying Tam K'Ikkar is the Rabbanan. Because Tam K'Ikkar, what Tam K'Ikkar means is that as long as I can taste this thing, as long as I can taste this pork, then it's as though the mamashut of the pork is here. It's K'Ikkar. It's like the mamashut, the actual substance is here, as long as I can taste the pork. And then it's usr, just like the mamashot, just like the isser itself, which means that's called Tam K'Ikkar. And if it's deraita, then that means you would need 60, or at least an amount that would mavatel the flavor, midoraita. Otherwise, it would be usr midoraita, because Tam K'Ikkar is deraita. And Rashi holds that you don't need 60. So that means he holds Tam K'Ikkar is Rabbanan. Also, the Rambam holds that.
Isn't Rashi saying that you need shishim in min she'eno mino? It's a Rabbanan. It's a you only
Midrabanan.
Yeah,
Midrabanan you do. I'm Midrabanan. But Midoraita. Again, you need, you can't get away from the statement of Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish that say in everything you need 60. But they're mixing together apples and oranges. In other words, in those two cases that they brought, sometimes when they say you need 60, it's because it's d'oraita you need 60. And sometimes when they say you need 60, it's d'Rabbanan you need 60. When they said in min b'mino that you need 60, it was a rabbinic law. When they said that you need 60 in min b'eno mino, that was the right law. Rashi holds, well, he doesn't hold by them at all. He holds like Rav and Shmuel.
Sorry, are you interpreting Benoten Tam as 60?
No, Benoten Tam is 60, yes. That's shorthand.
Okay.
Or 60 is shorthand for Benoten Tam.
Okay, yeah, just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, we learned, that's basically what was last week, where we said that if you can taste it, then it's aser, and that's Benoten Tam. And then we said that the rabbis put in a shear for that, which is 60. So they're equivalent. 60 is a filler, is a stand-in for Tam. Okay, so now we're at this Rabenu Tam. And he holds Rabenu Tam, is it Perish Rabenu Tam, Perish Rabenu Tam, the Tam K'Ikkar, b'min b'mino d'oraita. The Kevan Shenatan ha'isur Tam beheter, that since the Isser gave a flavor to the heter, ne'afach kulo, the heter turned into Isser. Ne'afach kulo liot Isser. So even though I'm eating this omelet, and I think I'm eating a piece of egg, really I'm eating a piece of pork fat, because it has the flavor of pork fat. V'lokin alav b'kazayit. And should circle the word kazayit there, because he's saying you look at kazayit, which means I eat a kazayit of the omelet, and I've done an isser. Well, not only have I done an isser d'oraita, but I get whipped for it. Because remember, you could do an isser d'oraita and not be whipped for it. For example, can someone give me an example?
Eating less than a kazayit.
Right. If you eat half a kazayit, it's aser d'oraita, but you don't get whipped for it. But if you eat a kazayit of this omelet, then you get whipped for it. And it's ke'ilu hayakulo isur, as though the whole omelet is isur, even though it really just has flavor of the lard in it. That's Rabenu Tam. So on each zayit and zayit of this omelet or this mixture of Tam Isser, you're going to get whipping every time you eat a gazayit. in the interest of time, I'll skip the next piece. Even the next piece explains how, in a rather convoluted way, Rabenu Tam learns the Gemara. Which Gemara? Well, actually, maybe we do have to read it. All right, so keep reading. It's a little bit convoluted, but that's my introduction to it. It's a convoluted explanation of that Rabenu Tam gives to the Gemara.
Okay. V'hai Rabbi Yochanan T'kol shetam alav v'lo mamasho ein lokin alav.
So this is a Gemara. Wait a second. This is a Gemara in Avodah Zarah. I think it's 67A and B, the bottom of 67A and moves to the top of B. And here Rav Yochanan says, "Call here," and so read it again. Kol she.
Kol shetam alav v'lo mamasho ein lokin alav. Anything that imparts a taste but that doesn't have its substance, we don't whip for it. What he's talking about,
and then he says, and then the continuation is, and kol tamo v'lo mamasho. If you have the tam but not the mamashut, then you're not whipped for it. So in order to get whipped, you have to have the tam and the mamashut. So now we're going to explain what he means. So Mayri b'min b'mino. B'mino, stop there. Wait, Mayri min b'mino. We're talking about a case of min b'mino. In other words, it's not even our case here. It's the case of what's the din of min b'mino? The din of min b'mino is batel be.
According to Rabenu,
the rov. No, min b'mino is Rabenu Tam is not talking about min b'mino. Rabenu Tam is only talking about min b'sheino mino. The case of Rav Yochanan, where he's talking about tamo mamasho, is min b'mino, and it's a totally different world that he's talking about it. And over there, he's saying you need the mamashut to get whipped, and if you just have the tam, even though it's min b'mino, you have the tam, then you're not getting whipped. That's what he was talking about. He wasn't talking about our case. He wasn't talking about min b'sheino mino. Mayri b'min b'mino, v'tamo umamasho de amar, and when he said tamo umamasho, the loki, that you get whipped for it. Go ahead.
Okay, when Isser is clearly visible and one can recognize it.
And you're eating it anyway. It's a piece of pork floating around there, and you're eating it in the mixture. Go on.
Tama v'lama masho aser midrabanan ve'ein lokin alav.
So what's the case of where you're not whipped? Where it's only Rabbanan, where it's tamo but not mamasho. What is that? Ve'ein lokin alav. Well, and that's just the case where it says tam. And then he goes on. V'hu adin im haya ha'isser mamash ba'ein ela she'ein nikar. Or alternatively, if the isser was there but you didn't know where it was not sticking out. Ein lokin alav. Why? He who, Alan?
You're batel b'rov.
Oh, you're not whipped because you're batel b'rov, because we're in min b'mino. We're in the world of min b'mino where everything is batel b'rov.
Right. So what happened is, you could tell the story that what happened is that Rabenu Tam wanted to explain that he says kol detamo v'lo mamasho ein lokin alav. He wanted to get that out of min b'sheino mino, so he said, "Oh, this is min b'mino." But then he has a problem that's attached to a statement v'tamo v'mamasho that lokin. So he had to come up with some other reason, because he already holds that it's not deoraita. The deoraita is just berov, so you shouldn't have lokin. So he had to come up with he brought in something from outside what we've been discussing so far, which is that like it's ba'ain and you're really eating it without.
Exactly.
Like
He basically, it's what you would call in Gemara learning in Ukimta. He takes the Gemara and says it's talking about a completely different case, and therefore it's not a kasha to his opinion. So go on, Ella.
Okay. V'huadin im haya iser mamash be'ein.
Ella haka mashmalan da filo hachi.
Sorry, the last minute. Ella haka mashmalan da filo hachi. Aser midrabanan,
In other words, there's rove. What he's saying like this is, it's coming to teach us that even though there's rove, heter, it's still aser midrabanan, because midrabanan you need 60 even in min mino. And that's what the Gemara is trying to teach. Trying to teach that you need 60 even in min mino, which is din derabanan. V'hadanek, even denek, go on.
V'hadanek min b'mino b'tama. Apagav d'lo yehiv tama ze b'zeh mishim d'ba'e l'memar tama v'lo mamasho aser. V'had heichanu aser b'yichte d'yahiv tamo min b'she'eno mino.
So here he's answering a kasha. You have a kasha, which is, why are we in the world, if we're in min b'mino, are we talking about flavor transferring from one to the other? It's all the same flavor. It's all min b'mino. How can you say if there's tamo in the other one, this should have been bothering us all along? We thought it was talking about min b'she'eno mino, and then it was irrelevant to ask the question, is flavor of the lard going into the omelet? But if it's a non-kosher egg and a kosher egg mixing together, then why would we talk about tam of the non-kosher egg? They have the exact same tam. There's no tam transfer. They're all one tam.
Right.
So he says, so his answer is, because the last 4 words here, what does he say? The yai. Read the last 5 words.
It is to the extent at which it would give taste if it were
if it were eno mino, exactly. He's saying that the ratio that the rabbis required in min b'mino is the same ratio that the Torah required in min b'she'eno mino. And what ratio is that? The ratio that gives flavor. So it's eggs in eggs, but the amount that you have to have is 60 to 1, because that's called giving flavor, even though it's not really giving flavor, it's all eggs. But it would give flavor if it would be not eggs.
Yeah,
so that's
chemically intuitive, right? It doesn't seem crazy.
Yeah, it doesn't seem crazy. Rabenu Tam, I said it's a convoluted. I sort of prejudiced you against this opinion. Yeah, I said it's a convoluted explanation of the Gemara, but we're about to see a simpler explanation. But let's get clear. What is Rabenu Tam's opinion? His opinion is that midoraita, every zayit and zayit is usher as long as what?
If you have less than a 60 bamin she'ino mino, so then everything is usher.
Right. If you have
basically like
more than 1 in 60 of the isser, which means another way of saying it, you have flavor of the isser there. Once you have flavor of the isser there, then every zayit and zayit is isser. So now we're going to have Rabenu Haim. Now, I don't know where this Rabenu Haim is other than in the Rosh. I mean, the Rosh brings this. This is all a quote of the Rosh. I don't know if this Rabenu Haim is in Tosfot. I don't recall seeing it, but not important. In any case, this is Rabenu Haim, who's a Bali Tosfot. And what is his opinion? Well, here, actually, let's have Sarah. Okay. If you want.
Sure. Okay. The Rabenu Haim Pirish, de Amri Shapir, b'min b'she'ino mino.
Oh, so what is the first thing he says?
He says that v'ta'amo mamasho. Well, okay.
No. Rabenu Haim Pirish, de Amri Shapir, b'min b'she'ino mino.
Right. This makes sense in a case where we're talking about min b'she'ino mino. Presumably, exactly. Then he's going to say it doesn't make sense in the other case.
Rabenu Tam, you had to put this out there in the world of min b'mino. Rabenu Haim says I can explain it as talking about a case of min b'eino mino, which is what we all thought.
Rabbi Yochanan's memra from
the same memra of Rabbi Yochanan that says tamo mamasho is aser and lokin alav, and tamo v'lo mamasho is aser but not lokin alav.
This is a much more straightforward reading of the Gemara.
Yeah. Well, you're about to read it. I thought you'd read it. I gave it. Yes, go ahead.
Just because it answers the question of why we were talking about Tam from the first.
Well, obviously, we much prefer it to be talking about min b'mino. I mean, sorry, min b'she'eno mino.
Right. Okay. V'tamo v'mamasho kari kisheyesh kizayit bichdei achilat pras. Okay, so and he's gonna now just like give a shear for what we're discussing, so that we're saying we're gonna basically treat mamasho as a ratio as opposed to a like
tamo mamasho. Curry is considered kishiyesh what? What is it? What's the ratio?
If there is one zayit in 3.
In kedei achilas pras, what's that amount?
Which is 3.
3 what?
4.
3 or 4 what?
Because I
yes. No, 3 or 4 eggs.
18.
Eggs. 3 or 4 eggs. Sorry, and if an egg, normally we would say that an egg is 2 zaytim, and that a pras is 4 eggs. So it comes out 8. 1 in 8. But the Rambam, I believe, holds that an egg is 3 zaytim, but he holds that a pras is also 3 eggs, so it comes out 9. I believe. Don't hold me to that. But the point is, the normal case is, let's say it's 8, which is so in other words, you need to have 1 zayit in 8 zayits. Kedei achilat pras. Now, kedei achilat pras, I just want to say something about it, is like this. If you eat, kedei achilat pras is the amount of time it takes to eat a pras of bread. Which means that you, in a kedei achilas pras, you could eat a pras of bread. If you ate at a rate faster than that, it is considered achilat gasa, and it's not proper eating, and you would not be chayiv on that type of eating. If you eat slower than that, well, depends. If you also eat a kazayit, you just have to eat a kazayit in a kedei achilas pras. You don't have to eat a pras in a kedei achilas pras. You have to eat a kazayit normally in a kedei achilas pras in order to be chayiv on eating that zayit. If you would eat a kazayit in the time it takes to eat 2 prases, then you would not be chayiv on that either. But if you eat a kazayit in the time it takes to eat a pras of bread, so you have a certain larger amount of time, then you're chayiv. But we're about to talk about eating a pras in a kedei achilas pras, eating an entire 3 eggs or 4 eggs in that time. So he goes like this. He says, the ratio that's called tamo umamasho is kazayit b'kedei achilas pras. So go on.
As have a kimo mamasho shel yisur.
Exactly.
Is that like, to what extent is that? I guess, like, where is he getting that as the ratio? Like, is he like? I don't think he's reading that straight out of the sugya.
He gets it from a case from Challah. He's going to get there, right?
He gets it from Challah. Okay.
There's a case by matzot also. Rice in.
Right, I guess we're going to get there. Yeah.
Rice in matzah. If you make matzah out of, let's say, 1 part, I'll just give an example. You give 1 part wheat and 5 parts rice. So rice is not a kosher grain for making matzah. But if you make matzah out of 1 part wheat, which is kosher for making matzah, and 5 parts rice, what's the status of that matzah? So the answer is it is kosher for Pesach. In other words, you can be yotze, you can mekayim the din of eating matzah on Pesach with such a matzah. But if it's got a ratio of more than 1 to 8, then you're not yotze. So there is a ratio like this. But exactly where he got it from in our sugya is not so clear. Everybody, right, that's the flaw of his argument, that he's sort of making up this thing. Okay, so go ahead. No, it's a rabbit out of a hat, I would say. It's just a different definition. So tamo mamasho is this ratio. If it's that intense mixture, then that's called tamo mamasho, and it's asur. Well, we're about to see. Is it asur d'oraita? What is it?
As have a kimo mamasho shel isur. V'kivan yesh kol kach v'ha'ochel mimenu k'zayit lokeh.
Kol kach mina isur. Kivan yesh kol kach mina isur. Since you have so much isur, high ratio of isur.
Sorry, I'm reading from al haTorah because I left my book at home by mistake, and so I think there are some.
All right, you'll have to stay after class and clean the erasers.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. והאוכל ממנו כזית לוקה כדחזינה נחלה and zvachim ועשיית אורז ובזית ממנה.
והאוכל ממנו כזית לוקה. If you eat one kazayit of this, then you get whipped. Kedachazinan be'isa oras, like we find by the case of an oras mixture for Pesach, like I just explained. The kazayit mimena yotze yedei chovato, that eating a kazayit of that mixture on Pesach will be fulfilling your mitzvah of eating matzot. Aflahakel. That's what it means by aflahakel. In other words, even to let you fulfill the mitzvah, it's not issur, but to let you to fulfill a positive commandment.
Right, because essentially it's more makil to say that you can eat it. And you can be eating it with this mixture as opposed to just eating it straightforward.
As opposed to having to go and find something else, right? Or as having to eat a larger amount.
The ta'amo velo mamasho. Okay, and then ta'amo velo mamasho is just anything that's under that ratio. And so, and that applies even in the case where there was nitinat tam. So you're still not loka as long as it's under this like 1 and 8, 1 and 9 ratio.
And in that case of our sugya, which is our sugya?
Yeah. Our sugya of the like Tam K'Ikkar sugya.
Yeah.
Right, like leaving the challah case. Yesh lefarish Tam K'Ikkar.
Our case is the case of zroa b'sheila. This is this Gemara that we saw in the summer, where we learned from I'm just reviewing it outside because not everybody saw it in the summer. There's a case of cooking an aisle as a korban, and the kohen eats the arm, and the hediot eats the rest of the aisle, and the ratio of the arm to the rest of the aisle is, let's say, 1 in 60, and the Torah permits the person to eat that, the hediot to eat that, even though it has the flavor of the arm, because it doesn't have the flavor of the arm, because it was, even though it's cooked together, it doesn't have the flavor because it was 1 in 60. So we learned from that if it would have a flavor, it would be asur. So we learned sort of Tam K'Ikkar midoraita from that, perhaps. In the end, it's not really a good limud, but that's the theoretical way of learning it at that point. In other words, when you cook it in a ratio that's worse than this arm to the rest of the deer, then it would give flavor and it would be asur, and that's a Torah law. So it says, "Ubahak deshmaita." So go ahead, deshmaitin.
Yesh lefarish Tam K'Ikkar tam mamash deba'il shari v'shar kodshim asur. So, when we say Tam K'Ikkar, what we're saying is tam mamash, like sort of applying that ratio, and that's what explains why it's mutar in the case of it's mutar for the hediot to eat the zroa b'sheila, but it's not mutar. Like we can't apply that principle broadly over all the coaching.
Actually, I want you to skip a little bit. V'hashta, just like one line ahead. V'hashta l'psak Rabenu Tam.
V'hashta l'psak Rabenu Tam de'im nafshecha ve'im nishpacha rotev ve'in yadua im haya bo shishim have sveka de'oraita ve'asrinan le. Ufasak Rashi have sveka de'rabanan v'sharei.
But according to Rashi,
right, Rashi thinks it's sveka de'rabanan, right, and Rabenu Tam thinks that the shear is
explaining the second part of the tour. In the second part of the tour, where he says that min b'she'eno mino, we're just now saying that's going according to Rabenu Tam.
Right, because Rashi would be more makil.
Would be more makil.
Okay. Lo pasak Rashi have a speka derabanan b'sharei atkan. Ve'afal pi shebishim Rabenu Haim katav harosh had ta'amo v'mamasho kari leyeshbo kazai bichdei achilat pras va'ochel mimenu kazai lokeh lo nimna Rabenu mikatvu b'shem Rabenu Tam mishum demashma deleinyan dina lo palik Rabenu Tam ve'Rabenu Haim. So he didn't like.
So wait, what's the problem? What's the kasha? First of all, what's the difficulty with the tour? Rabenu is the tour here. What's the problem with the tour?
The tour
the
doesn't.
Problem with the tour, yeah, the tour doesn't attribute this view to
Rabenu Haim.
To Rabenu Haim, even though the Rosh does.
He attributes it to whom?
To Rabenu Tam.
In other words, if you look back in the tour, now you understand the tour is actually saying Rabenu Haim's opinion. How do I know that? They agree. Rabenu Tam and Rabenu Haim both agree that Tam K'Ikkar is d'oraita. Where do they disagree?
They seem to disagree what is actually called Tam versus Ikkar, right?
Yeah.
What is called Ikkar really is what they're disagreeing about. So
right.
No, that's not like not the answer I'm looking for.
But that it okay, I'll argue with you right now on it. But
what's the din? I'm interested in a din. I want the din difference.
Wait, sorry, could you repeat the question?
What's the difference in din? I want an example of difference in din between Rabenu Tam and Rabenu Haim. Just read the end of the tour here when he quotes Rabenu Tam. What does he say at the end? Ella she'ein lokin. What does he say? Rach, Sarah, why don't you read that? Or Alish, what do you want to say?
You're muted, Alish.
I'm struggling here with the versions. I have it only online and it always disappears. So if you please can say it again, like which tour?
You should really have the books because then you can just move your
I
eye.
know. I just
but I appreciate that you don't have your book, but it's very important to have the book. In the tour, it says Perush Rabenu Tam de'min be'mino kevan she'ein noten bo tam min haTorah batel barov ela shechamim etzrichu shishi b'shelo b'mino asur min haTorah ad shishi. Ela, here's what I want to say. Ela she'ein lo kin alav ad shi'eh bo kol kach min ha'isur ad shi'eh b'toch kol arba beitzim. That's a chilas pras. That's a pras. Kol arba beitzim min haheter kazayis min ha'isur va'az chayav al kol kazayit v'kazayit mimenu. Whose opinion is that?
That's Rabenu Haim.
That's Rabenu Haim. What would Rabenu Tam say? How do you know it's not Rabenu Tam?
Well, Rabenu Tam seems to be more machmir.
Rabenu Tam is more machmir, Ruben. Right. Why? What would he say?
So he says the nehefach ha'eter leisur, and then automatically.
When? Well, he also says it's nehefach leisur because you're chayav on kol kazayit v'kazayit of this mixture. There's only one kazayit of isur here, but it's in a high concentration, so every kazayit is asur.
Right, but by Rabenu Tam it's at 1 in 60.
In Rabenu Tam the ratio is different. In Rabenu Tam, as long as it's 1 in 60, as long as it's noten tam, then you're chayav on kol kazayit v'kazayit. So we have two dinim. We have one din that, according to Rabenu Tam, every zayit is zayit. Once you have tam, then every zayit you get whipped for. According to Rabenu Haim, no, that's not the Gemara. The Gemara is talking about tamal umamasho. It means you have a high ratio. You have a ratio of 1 to 8 or 1 to 9. Then you get whipped on all zayit. You only have one zayit there originally. Now, does anybody read the Rambam? Oh,
no. Before I get to the Rambam, I actually think the Rabenu Tam is saying that if it's less than 1 in 60, to me, if it's that he says that I'm lokal on every kazayit of the entire thing, right? Not of every kazayit of the isur. He says the entire thing becomes isur, right? And therefore, I get for every kazayit I get malkot. Versus here, it's right. If
that's Rabenu Tam. That's exactly what I said.
Yeah. And Rabenu Haim says you can eat more than a kazayit of the thing. The whole isur doesn't become, the whole mixture doesn't become isur. It's only if I eat a certain amount of the isur in that in that amount, right?
I don't understand the word you said.
Okay, that's fair. Right. No, in other words, right, Rabenu Haim never says the whole thing becomes an isur in terms of the dioraita, in terms of
well, how much do you have to eat? How much do you have to eat?
You have to eat a kazait of the isur in a certain ratio, right? Not that you have to eat a kazait in that time. You have to eat a kazait of the isur in that time.
Right. So for Rabenu Tam, makes no difference whether it's a kazait.
That would be impossible because then you'd be eating a chilat gasa. You're saying you have to eat the entire. You're saying you have to eat the entire pras?
No. Yeah. You have to eat in the time of.
You have to eat the entire pras. I have one zayit in a pras. I have to eat the entire pras.
In the time it takes to eat that pras, you have to eat a kazayit of isur, right? Not that you've eaten.
I have to eat the whole pras because the ratio
only so that's not achilat gasa. That's exactly achilat.
That's exactly the rule. So anything less, it would be mutter, and anything more would be achilas gasa, and it's a razor case. According to you, it's a razor case. It has to be exactly one in that, and I eat it in that time because if it's slightly more.
It could be more than that because if the mixture is 1/4.
No, but that's not correct. That's not correct. It's a nice thought, but it's not correct.
No, I hear what you say. Like a fundamental difference.
I mean, we can look at Rabenu Haim again.
No, but hold on a second. I think that per Rabenu Tam, no matter what piece of the mixture you eat, the whole thing is a yisur. However, according to Rav Chaim, there is places where you might eat a kazayit that hasn't touched the isur, and that wouldn't be problematic. Rabenu Tam said no matter what you eat in the mixture, everything is problematic.
Remember the case of the rice. Nobody says you have to eat a pras of matzah in order to be yotzei. You have to eat one zayit of the matzah. As long as it has that ratio, one zayit is enough. You don't have to eat a whole
opinion
pras.
Definitely shows up.
That opinion is of the Rambam. Wait a second. According to that opinion, you see, what I take issue with, Joel, is that then you wouldn't have a din of Tam K'Ikkar, Deraita, because you're actually eating the actual original Isser. You don't need a din of Tam K'Ikkar. I'm just eating the zayit that was there. I just had to eat a lot of bread to get there. And I eventually, by eating all that bread, I got that one zayit of Isser. But that's not called a din of Tam K'Ikkar Deraita. And Rabenu Tam and Rabenu Haim agree, but din. That's exactly what the tourists of the Yosef said. They agree that Tam K'Ikkar is Deraita. What you're confusing is the dat of the Rambam.
No, he says you're not lokeh on it. You can still say it's asur mina Torah. You're just not lokeh.
No,
right?
You're lokeh. No, what's asur is the whole, even if it's 1 in 60. According to Rabenu Haim, if it's 1 in 60, it's asur,
but
you don't get whipped until it reaches the threshold of this.
Yeah, because now you're
kazai is pras. Yeah, and then once it's at that ratio, every zayat you're chayim.
Yeah, because up until there, right? It's if it's less than 1/8, you're only eating tam, right? Rabbi Yochanan, who we're trying to explain here, says if you're eating tamo v'lo mamasho, it's asur, but you're lokeh, right? But if you eat tamo u'mamasho, what's that? That's if you eat kazait b'tochdei achilat pras, right? And so then you've eaten mamash at that point.
Read Rabenu Haim again. Read Rabenu Haim.
I'll read it again. I might be wrong, but
go ahead, read it.
Oh, you want me to read it right now? It's all right. Rabenu Haim Piresh, the Ire Shapir, b'mim b'she'eno mino, v'tamo u'mamasho kare kiyesh kazait b'chtei achilat pras. He doesn't say kazait what, but I assume he means kazait isur b'chtei achilat pras.
That's the ratio. Tamo u'mamasho kare kisheyesh, when there is a kazait in pras, in a kedei achilas pras, or in a pras, I read it.
Yeah, but then I don't have to eat a kazait of the whole thing. I have to eat a kazait of the isur b'toch kedei achilat pras.
The az have kamo mamasho.
Yeah, shel isur kivan yesh kokach mina isur, right? Which actually isn't.
Va'ochel mimenu
kazait.
Kazait mimenu. What's mimenu?
I assume of the isur, not of the thing, right?
Of the tarovet.
Yeah,
it's of the tarovet. It's of the tarovet. It's obviously of the tarovet, Joel. Ha'ochel mimenu, from the tarovet kazayit loke. Otherwise, you're not talk. Otherwise, you would have had to say velo loke ad she'ochel et kol et shlosha beitzim, or enough maspik mina tarovet that he would have eaten a kazayit.
Joel, your opinion is, I think, the opinion that Ran gives later on in the Yosef.
Is it? Maybe I'm confusing, but I don't know. I don't see it that it's obvious that kazait there means kazait minatarovet. But all right, I will be modeh for the moment and not take this class over. But
yeah.
I see your reading. I see your reading, Joel. I think it makes sense.
Your reading is possible, but it doesn't make sense.
Since there's so much of the Isur, and if you kazait of the Isur, then locate.
Yeah, I mean, if the brackets, if you read the brackets mina Isur, then the subject is still Isur.
I'm not saying it's impossible to read it that way. I never said it's impossible, but that's not the way to read it. I'm just telling you, that's not the way to read it. That's not the whole weight of what he's saying. The whole weight of what he's saying is that once we have this high ratio, it's every Zayid is Asur.
So why isn't he saying that the whole thing is nefach leisur like Rabenu Tam?
Because now, again, he is essentially saying that, right? He's saying once there is that proportion, the whole thing is like nefach and isser that you would be lokat on, because there is such a significant presence of the isser that in any bite you're having, you're tasting the mamashut of it, right? It's going to be like really noticeable and present in any bite that you take, right? So if you eat a kazayit of it because that's a shear, then you're eating a kazayit of isser, which this entire thing has become.
No, but then you haven't eaten.
So you'd be looked at on because it's really noticeable.
That's the meaning of Tam K'Ikkar. That you have the Tam is so strong that it's like you had the Ikkar, and now you ate a kazayit of it, and now you're located on a midoraita. That's
right, but the language is still different. I don't think you could push Rabenu Tam into Rav Chaim. Like, it doesn't say that the whole thing is nefach leisur. It just said that, okay, there is so much of the isur that chances are that you're going to end up eating like a kazayit of the isur. At least that's the way I read it.
What if you only ate a kazayit? Then you for sure didn't. If you ate a kazayit, then 100% you didn't eat a kazayit of isur, because some of it was, and then you wouldn't be located. But he says, kazayit mimenu located.
Yeah, so the question is what mimenu means is really what our
that's what I asked you. What does mimenu refer to?
And I think it means isur. If
it would be isur, it'd be mimeno with a vav. It's mimena tarovet. It's nekeva.
Mine says mimenu.
Yeah, mine says with a vav too.
Mine says with a hey.
Oh, wow. All right. So now we have the whole,
Well, yours is wrong. Mine is right. You're reading.
I think you should go after the Rav at this point. Mine also has a vav.
No, I do not agree. No, I'm reading it correctly. I'm sorry. I'm telling you how to read it. I've been reading this. I've read this thing, I don't know, 15 times with kavrusas, with different kavrusas. This is the way to read it. I can't tell you. That's the import of what he's saying. That is the point of what he's saying. And Lexi's on my side. And if Lexi's on my side, then I have to be right.
That's fair. That is fair. I will be modeh both because you're my teacher and it's 2 against 1. So I'll take that.
Well, Joel, let's take a break. Let's take a few minutes break and then we'll come back in 5 minutes. Welcome, Rabbi Landis.
Are you going to continue in 5 minutes or?
I got to continue, Joel.
Okay, fair enough.
Who can I pick on? Here, maybe Reuven, you read a little bit. You want to read a little bit of the tour? I mean, not of the tour, of the Shulchan, of the Beit Yosef.
Sure, where are we at?
Katav Rashba.
Katav Rashba, Shdat Ramban?
Shdat Ramban, yeah.
I'll give my best shot.
This is going to be a summary of the opinions and his psak, and the psak of the Beit Yosef.
So וכתב הרשב"א שדעת הרמב"ן כפירש רש"י וכן דעת הר"ן. והרשב"א כתב שהרעב"ד סובר כרבנו תם, דתם כעיקר דאורייתא מין בשאינו מינו, ושכן דעת הרב בהלכות, ובסוף דבריו כתב לעניין פסק הלכה אנו, על מי נסמוך,
פסק הלכה, כתב לעניין פסק הלכה,
אנו על מי נסמוך? בואו ונסמוך על דברי רבנו תם דרי. ובעל ההלכות והראב"ד, שרבים הם. So we should rely on them because there's a lot of them, I guess. ואמרו להחמיר בשל תורה. עד כאן לשונו.
And they said to be strict about a Torah. Oh, sorry, my video's on. And they said to be strict about a Torah law. In other words, he's actually saying that there's also other opinions. There's the Rashi and the Rambam. I mean, they both say that it's the Rabbanan, Tam K'Ikkar, which are certainly powerful opinions. But he's adding to that the fact that the strict opinions are saying, well, Lachmir b'shel Torah. In other words, maybe this is an Issa D'Oraita, so we'll go with the opinion that it's Issa D'Oraita. In other words, since this is a potential Issa D'Oraita, we'll follow the strict opinion.
So in other words, Tam K'Ikkar and mean the Sheino Mino is D'Oraita, and we should be Machmir in like cases
Right.
D'Oraita?
Exactly. Go on.
וזה לשונו I don't know which that,
Torah Tabayit.
בתורת הבית הקצר, מין בשאינו מינו, אם יש כזה מינה איסור בכדי אכילת פרס, אסור, ולא כמעליו. וזהו שקראו חכמים טעמו ממשו.
Right, and that's what the rabbis call Tamo Mamasho. So what is that? Who is that like?
Seems to be like Rav Chaim.
What? Like Rav Chaim?
Yeah.
Rabenu Haim. Kazayat mina isser, b'ktei achilas pras, asur v'lokin alav, and that's what the rabbis call Tamo Umamasho. Go ahead.
פחות מכאן, אסור דבר תורה, עד שיבטל במיעוטו בשישים.
So, and less than that is also asur from the Torah. It's just you're not whipped on it. A ratio that's less than that, you're also asur from the Torah, but you're not whipped by it.
Right. So until we have this ratio of, I guess, bichtei achila pras, like kazai bichtei achila pras, so then you're not whipped, right?
Right.
Oh. אלא שהם לוקים עליו ככל חצי שיעור שאיסור דבר תורה, וזהו שקראו טעמו ולא ממשו. עד כאן.
So in other words, we have a concept called chetzi shur asur min Torah. It's not strong. The ratio is not strong enough to be asur, to be whipped for it, but it is strong enough to be asur min Torah. So it's like chetzi. He calls it. He's equating it to chetzi shir, even though it's not really. It's kind of like chetzi shir. It's like not the full shir, because it's not the highest ratio. But it's still
basically like different level of a crime, right? You steal up to $100, like you don't get whipped, like you steal more than $100.
It's like manslaughter versus murder, right?
Right. ולא משהו עד כאן. מה שכתב רבנו ירוחם, דרשב"א כרש"י, לא דק, דכרבנו תם סבירה לי. And what the Rashba was saying that, what Rabenu Yocham was saying that the Rashba holds like Rashi, it's not clear the Rabenu Tam Spirali because he seems to be thinking like Rabenu Tam.
Right. So now you can either turn. Now I want to do the Rambam, which is going to be brought here, which is the kind of the third opinion. Rabbi Lannis, you want to say something?
Yeah, no to use. Besides using an analogy of manslaughter and murder, what terminology would you use when you get malkot and when you don't get malkot? I mean, in terms of there has to be a terminology. We have to do better in terminology.
Well, you get whipped for any time you do.
No, I understand that.
A Torah violation.
The worst Easter is called what? And the less Easter is called what? Is it a less Easter? It's still Asur min Torah.
Still Asur min Torah. It's not punishable.
I know.
It's a crime that's not punishable. You want a Hebrew term?
I want Saul to think for a second.
Lo bar onshim. He's lo bar onshim. I don't know. He's not culpable. He's not culpable.
It's Asur lo bar onshim. Okay. Another one is. The higher level is Asur bar onshim. Okay. I'll take it in the short term. Somebody's going to come up with a better.
You also don't bring a chatat if it's chatzi shir, right? If it's b'shogeg, right?
Right. everything the Torah has.
No, I think Nachum, you're right. That's a better way of saying it. The Easter is there, but he's low bar ownership. Okay, that's kind of descriptive, but it's actually right as far as we can go. Okay, thank you. It helps.
So now the Beit Yosef is going to bring the Rambam, which I said is kind of like a third opinion in this whole question of Tam K'Ikkar. We're really, like I said, today shares a lot of focus on Tam K'Ikkar. So Reuven, keep reading. You're reading well.
והרמב"ם כתב פרק ט"ו מהלכות מחלות אסורות. כלב הכליות שנפל לתוך הגריסין, ונימוח, הכל תואמים את הגריסין, אם לא נמצא בהם טעם חלב,
ונימוח הכל, and everything got melted together, תואמים את הגריסין, you have to taste the grisine. Obviously a goy would taste the grisine, but the Ram doesn't say exactly, but he means a Gentile.
Right. I guess you could include an aval here. אם לא נמצא בהם טעם חלב, הרי אלו מותרים, but if you don't find the טעם of the חלב, so then they're מותרים. ואם נמצא בהם טעם חלב, והיה בהם ממשו, הרי אלו אסורים מן התורה.
Oh, and he uses the same terminology. If it has mamasho and tamo, it's asur min Torah. Well, he uses that terminology because he needs to use that terminology because he's faithful to the Gemara. And there's this Rav Yochanan and Avodah Zarah that says kol she'achel tamo mamasho loki. So he says it, but now we're about to see how he explains it, and let's see if it's different.
So basically, he gives different category, and then he continues and said nimtza b'am tamo velo haya b'am mamasho.
So before he explains it, he goes to the other side. Yeah, go ahead.
So the case is in a case where, let's say, there is the taste, but there is no mamasho.
No, not the case. Nimsa. Now he's just going to the reverse side. What if it was tamo, but there wasn't mamasho? So that's a different case.
Yeah, different category. So he goes through a list of different categories. So if you taste it, then you have to mamasho, etc. So nimsa b'am tamo velo haya b'am mamasho, arelu asurin midivre sofrim. So then in this case, you're only a asur d'Rabbanan.
Oh, so wait a second. Stop here. Very important point. Lo hayam b'han. What was there in them? Haya b'han.
Tamo velo mamasho. So basically, you have the taste, but you don't have any physical remain of the.
So it's asur what?
Then it's asur d'Rabbanan.
It's asur d'Rabbanan. So is he like Rabenu Tam or Rabenu Haim?
That in order to be asur d'oraita, you need to have tamo and mamasho. You need to have both elements present.
And once you're lacking the tam, it's asur d'Rabbanan. Well, does Rabenu Tam agree with that? No. Rabenu Tam says, once you have the tam, it's asur d'oraita. It's just maybe you don't get whipped. Maybe you don't get whipped for it. So here you see clearly he's like Rashi, right? The Rambam is for sure 100% in the camp of Tam K'Ikkar is only d'Rabbanan, because here you have tam. He says you have time, you don't have mamasho, it's only asur d'Rabbanan. Now he gives an example.
So ketzad u'mamasho basically goes on to explain what is mamashut. Ketzad u'mamasho, kegon shaya min ha'chelav kazait b'chol shalosh betim min ha'tarovet. So basically, the mamasho is really measurement. It's as if you had kazait of the grease in every 3 beitzim min ha'tarovet.
Well, because I have the chelav.
The chelav v'isur, yeah.
Yeah. You have
min ha'chelav kazait b'chol shalosh betzim min ha'tarovet. Now,
exactly.
im achal min ha'garisim halu k'shalosh betzim, oil v'yesh b'hem kazait min ha'chelav loke.
So what does he say here? Wait a second. Wait, shaharei tam ha'isur u'mamasho kayam. So when do you get malkot?
When you eat enough to actually eat a kazayit of Isur.
Which is how much? Which is how much?
3 eggs in this case, right? Because
if it's in the least concentrated case, it would be 3 eggs. You'd have to eat 3 eggs in the time it takes to eat 3 eggs. And then what you would get whipped, even though he holds Tam K'Ikkar d'Rabbanan. Why? Why are you getting whipped here?
Hold a second,
Sarah?
before we go further, what does that mean in the time that it takes to eat 3 eggs? Doesn't mention that.
Sorry, I wasn't raising my hand.
Oh, but I still want.
I was just scratching my head.
Oh, okay. I thought in your eyes that you knew the answer. Wait, he doesn't say in the time. Well, you always have to eat kedei achilas pras. You're never chayav of anything that you for eating unless you eat it in kedei achilas pras.
Well, the only one that brings it up is Rabenu Haim, right? So, which means that you can deduce that other ones are not bringing it up.
It's brought up all over Shas and Poskim and everywhere in the Rambam. You're never chayav on eating anything unless you eat it in a certain time frame. You can't eat something over the course of 10 years and be chayav. It has to be eaten within a certain amount of time.
No, that seems to be an element specific to Rabenu Haim. Rabenu Tam doesn't bring it. Rashi doesn't bring it. No one else does.
Well, you have to. Yes, so but you have to be willing to accept more than just this text that you've seen in front of you right now.
No, that's fair, but as it relates to this particular machloket or this particular
so you're saying that the Rambam would say you're chayav if you ate it over the course of 20 years?
It seems to be it.
Okay, perhaps, but I don't think so. It's not really that important point. There is obviously a time frame in which you have to eat it.
But it seems like the Rambam is more mekel than Rabenu Haim. Both of them refer to kazayit b'chdei pras, but for the Rabenu Haim, if you eat a kazayit of the tarovet already, that's a sur. But for the Rambam, you have to eat the whole 3 beitzim, which has in it a kazayit of iser. So you're not eating a kazayit of the tarovet. Right. You have to eat a kazayit of the iser itself.
Exactly.
Right.
And why does he say that? What's the logic?
Because
why does he have to say that?
Tam K'Ikkar Rabbanan, not
right, because Tam K'Ikkar is Rabbanan. The fact that this Tam here is irrelevant. The only way you can create an Isser is by actually eating the original Isser. We're not talking about Tam. We're only talking about the original Isser. So here you have to eat enough of the original Isser, and if the mixture is and now it makes a lot of sense, because if the Isser is in a weaker proportion. Imagine the Isser is in 1 kazayit, not in 4 beitzim, but in 6 beitzim. So it's still pretty high concentration. Why wouldn't you be over the Isser? According to the Rambam, you could never be whipped for eating that. Why not?
Because you could never eat a kazayit worth of isul in the time it takes to eat a pras.
Exactly. You could never eat a kazayit of the original Isser in the time it takes to eat a pras, because you would, unless you ate super fast. And if you ate super fast, then that would go into the category of achila gasa. And achila gasa, you're also not chayav for. So the only way is if it's a concentration of kazayit in a pras, or a kazayit, it could be in a half a pras. That could also be, right? Because 1 egg in 3 eggs would be mutter deraita, right? But if you ate it all, it would be usher, you'd get whipped for it. Right? It would be Asr D'Rabbanan every Zayit, and once you ate enough of those zaytim, let's say half a pras, to have a full kazayit of the Yisr, then you'd get whipped. So there's no din in the Rambam of Tam K'Ikkar D'Oraita, and therefore the only way to get whipped, therefore he explains the Gemara, which says Tamo u'mamasho ma lokin alav is not a contradiction to him. When is Tamo u'mamasho? When you actually ate a kazayit of the original Isser.
Oh, do you want me to continue?
Yeah.
So
here I checked in Frankel, and the better version is not aval but achal. And it makes more sense here. Because I noticed, I looked at this and I said it shouldn't be aval, it should be achal, and then I checked in the Frankel, and it is achal there. So read it like I say. Achal doesn't really change anything, but it's a little bit better.
You could say aval imachal, but achal pachot mishlosha betzim. So now, assuming that he ate less than this particular amount, makinoto makat mardut midivreim. So
right, because he ate. Right, because he didn't eat enough of it to get a zayit.
So he's basically saying that Tam K'Ikkar is derabanan, and unless you have Tam Mamasho, so then you're not chav deraita. And in this case, since he ate less than 3 eggs, therefore there is no Mamasho, and it's only Tamo, which is derabanan.
V'ken, go on, v'ken.
V'ken, im lo haya betarovet kazait bechol sharash betim, אף על פי שיש בהם טעם חלל, ואכל כל הקדרה, אינו לוקה אלא מכת מרטוט, עד כאן לשונו.
And that's exactly my point. He ate the whole kedera, but he ate it in too great of a time. You know, it had in it, the ratio was too weak, but he ate the whole kedera. But it's a weak enough ratio that even though he actually did eat a kazayit, maybe he ate 3 kazayits of Isser, but he did it over a course of eating the whole pot, which took him maybe an hour. So he's also pakir. But he gets a rabbinic whipping. That's what makot mardut is.
Mm-hmm.
Then now he goes on. Now is the base Yosef talking. Venira.
ונראה דלא עתה כרבנו תם, ואף על פי שם בו כזית בכדי אכילת פחס, מתאסר לרבנו תם מדאורייתא כל זמן שאין בו 60. ובשיש בו כזית בכדי אכילת פחס, נמי לרבנו תם מחייב על אכילת כזית. However, so he's basically saying that the Rambam doesn't agree with Rabenu Tam, because for Rabenu Tam, even if there isn't a kazait bichta achilat pchas, it's still asra midoraita. So which means like even if you don't have the mamashut, you only have the tam. Rabenu Tam holds that Tam K'Ikkar is doraita.
Right. As long as there's 60, it's asr, according to Rabenu Tam.
B'sheyesh bo kazait bichta achilat pchas, and if there is an added mamashut, nami le Rabenu Tam mechayav al achilat kazait. You also have al achilat kazait.
You know, he means on each kazayit and kazayit.
Right.
Rambam,
however, according to Rambam, lo michayev at shocher keshelosh betim. However, for the Rambam, you're not chayav min Torah until you have tamo umamasho, and you actually eat the mamashut.
Right. Aval
Kirashi ateshapir, but if you say that it goes according to Rashi, then it makes sense. The afal gav de savarashi delit le rava tam kikar bechulin. הנמירי כשאין שם אלא טעמו של איסור בלבד ולא ממשו, אבל כשיש שם טעמו ממשו, דהיינו כי ידבק כזית בכדי אכילת פחת, פשיטא דמדאורייתא אסור.
So he says the Rashi would for sure, even if the Rashi also says no Tam K'Ikkar d'oraita, he for sure would agree with this case that the Rambam came up with, where you're eating the tarovet, and in the course of eating the tarovet, you swallow the kazayit of Isser. He for sure Rashi would agree with that. So,
הפשיטא דמדאורייתא אסור ומלקה לקי עליה, כדאמר רבי יוחנן.
And that's because that's what Rabbi Yochanan said. Now he's now going to quote, Kol shetamo.
וממשו אסור ולוקים עליו, וזהו כזית בכדי אכילת פחס.
By the way, that's the Gemara. That's the Gemara. Zeu kazayit b'dei achilat pras. That's actually the Gemara.
ומינה נשמע וטעמו ולא ממשו דאין לוקים עליו, היינו אין בו כזית בכדי אכילת פחס. ובהאו דקאמר דלידבר לרבה תם כיכר בחולין מדאורייתא, ואפילו נתערב שם גופו של איסור.
Okay, so to summarize, 3 opinions. Rabenu Tam is once there's Tam of the Isser, every Zayid and Zayid is Asr. Rabenu Haim, once there's a high ratio of Kazayit B'dei Achilas Pras, then every Zayid is Asr. Every Zayid and Zayid is Asr. And Rashi and the Rambam, it's
Asr and Lokin alav.
Sorry, is Asr and Lokin alav, yeah, right. Rabenu, thank you. Rabenu Haim would hold that if it has a lower ratio, it's still Asr. It's still Asr once, as long as there's Tam. Once you get to that higher ratio, then you get whipped. And then the Rambam holds that if it's just Tam, then it's only Asr d'Rabbanan. You're also not whipped, but you're not. But it's also Asr. But it's Asr d'Rabbanan. And once it gets to the higher ratio, then it's interesting because once you get to the higher ratio, then you might say it's asur. It's interesting. Why doesn't the Rambam say it's asur d'oraita on eating even a small amount? Because it's like chetzi shir. That's an interesting question, which is a whole.
Doesn't he say that it's not? It doesn't count. Once you get to a little large.
Once you get to the higher ratio, if you eat the whole thing, if you eat enough to consume a zayit, then you'll get whipped for it. And then I can ask a question for thought, which we don't have to deal with now, which is, what if it's at that higher ratio, but you don't actually eat enough to get a zayit, but you eat something. Is that chetzi shir asur min Torah? Is that an isur Torah? Seems like you would say it would be. But then you could ask the question, why not say chetzi shir even in a lower ratio? So, even if it's 1 in 60, there's Tom there.
Sorry, I don't get the question.
Oh, forget about that second part. The question is like this, according to the Rambam, if you ate enough of it to consume a zayit, then you get whipped. What if you, in the higher ratio, what if you ate not enough of it to get a zayit? You ate enough of it to have a half of a zayit. That would be asur min Torah. It just wouldn't be whipped for it. Because it's a chetzi shir. We have a rule called chetzi shir asur min Torah. Even a half a shir, you don't get whipped for it, but it's asur.
Yeah, but if it's less than that ratio, it's not mamash anymore, and you don't get whipped for mamash. That's the difference, right?
Right, I think so. I think I agree with you, Joel. If it's less than that, then it's not mamasho at all, and you don't get whipped for it. Because there's no concept in the Torah of Tam. And this is like a mind-blowing thing if you really sit down and think about it. What it's saying is the Torah doesn't care about Tam. It doesn't care at all about Tam. It only cares about mamasho, eating the actual substance. And the substance is not there unless it's in a high ratio, so it's not even there. So
what's the difference between chetzi shir and the lokin derabanan?
You would be located Rabbanan if you ate it.
Right.
You would be located Rabbanan.
So the only
what if you ate a half a zayit? What if you ate a half a zayit of the Torah? I mean, whatever. I don't want to get into too many complicated questions.
Right,
that's enough.
But that's the chetzi shir midoraita, and then you loke on a derabanan. I guess that would be my understanding of it.
Yeah, there is a possibility of being loke on. Well, you wouldn't be loke on violating an isser deraita unless you ate a zayit. But a derabanan, you could be you get a rabbinic whipping on violating an isser deraita at a hetzi shir. Anyway, we've accomplished a very good thing, which is to understand the difference between the Rambam, Rabenu Haim, and Rabenu Tam. I want to, yeah. Well, let's just finish here. Sarah, can you read just the end of the tour, Kasav Rashba?
Sorry, my computer was being difficult. But Katava Rashba, she'im nitzarev b'mino v'she'eno mino v'nishvach ro'inat she'eno mino ki'ilu eno v'tolin lomar shemino haya rov v'nit batel ki heichei da'amrinan ro'inat mino ki'ilu eno lahakel she'eno mino rabba alav v'mevatlo laman de'ile mi b'mino lo batel. Okay, so the yes. So the Rashba says that if you have min b'she'eno mino and then it pours out and you spill it, then we can basically do.
No, wait. What's the case? Wait. She'im nitarev b'mino u'b'she'eno mino. So what's the case?
Right. So the case is you have a mixture of two kinds of thing.
So give me an example.
I don't know. You have
let's say chalev
and
basar.
I don't know, basar, and
they're both what? They're both kosher.
They're both kosher. Then
kosher chalev and kosher basar.
Then
what falls in?
Falls in.
And then non-kosher chalev, non-kosher fat, forbidden fats fall in.
Yeah. So there's shuman and basar, and then chalev. Okay.
So this is a case where the Rambam writes about this kind of a case. Actually, I'd like to look. Do you guys all have access to the Rambam? So open up the Rambam very quickly, chapter 15, halacha 22.
Sorry, we're talking Machalot Asurat? I'm guessing yes, then.
Machalot Asurat. It's in Kedusha.
Can you see the numbers again? 15.
15, chapter 15, Kaf Bet. I mean, it's in the Beit Yosef, but I think it's faster if I tell you that location. So Sarah, I'll read it, Sarah.
Okay, mi b'mino v'davar acher shenit arvu kagon kaderasha haya b'chelev aliyah v'grisian v'nafal letocha chelev klayot.
All right, so we have the case is Grisim mixed with chaylev of permitted chaylev from the fatty tail of a sheep.
Right.
Okay.
And then we have chaylev klayot, i.e. asur chaylev that falls
so chaylev
in.
klayot then falls in. Go ahead.
V'nimcha hakol v'naseh guf echad, and then it all kind of like melts together. Ro'ina tachaylev ha'aliyah v'hagrisin ki'ilu hein guf echad. Then we sort of imagine that the chaylev from the mutar chaylev from the tail and the grisin are one item. U'misharinen chaylev klayot ki grisin u'chel aliyah. Then we look at the asur fat.
I think it's good. I think it's a bet. Good greasy, no? It's a kaf?
That makes more sense, but that is not what Safaria has.
Okay.
If
Go
you
ahead.
have Frankel, I'm all ears.
No, I don't have it in front of me. Go ahead.
Okay. So we then basically combine the two mutar things and then measure the usr thing against the ratio of 60.
In other words, we don't start saying, well, wait a second, what's minnow, what's not minnow? We take everything together, and as long as we have enough of everything together against what fell in, and it's 60, then it's kosher.
Right. Im haya echad mishishim mutar sheharei efshar kan la'amod al hatam, because basically there's it's not possible to distinguish the different tastes once like everything has kind of melded together.
Exactly. In other words, this is very interesting. The Rambam holds that you should always use a Gentile. When do you not use a Gentile? When it is physically, when it won't work, when it just won't work. And this is a case where it just won't work. Because if the Gentile comes and tells you, I taste the taste of chaylev, well, that's meaningless. Maybe he's tasting the chaylev mutter, the chaylev that's mutter. So the fact that he tastes chaylev or doesn't, the fact that he tastes chaylev is not going to be useful to us. So we have to go by 60 here. And in fact, all the cases where the Rambam says to use 60 is only in cases like this where it's impossible. So that's the standard. That's the standard case. Now, again, we have min b'mino u'b'she'eno mino, and it's all there. You need 60. Now go back to the tour. The tour is the starting point, and then with the tour or the Rashba brings a slightly more complicated case.
Right. So now we have basically the same case, but we've also spilled some.
Exactly. The same exact case, but we've spilled some. So we might have had 60 and we might not have had 60 and we don't know. So go ahead.
Okay. וכתב הרשב"ש אם נזרע במינו ושאינו מינו ונשפך, רואים את שאינו מינו כאילו אינו, ותולים לומר שמינה היה רוב ונתבטל. So we're going to imagine that the thing that is I guess in our original case, the basar, right? The thing that is not the same mean as whatever treif thing that fell in, it's as if it is not there. And we're going to imagine that it is actually chaylev or shuman. No. It's actually fat.
No, not that it's fat. We're going to imagine that the meat is not there. And then we're going to ask ourselves, is there a rove of more kosher chaylev than there is non-kosher chaylev? And if there's more kosher chaylev, then what do we know? That Minatorah.
The Minatorah it's okay.
We're in Minatorah, it's kosher. So at worst, we have an Issur D'Rabbanan now. Because if we ignore the Eino Mino, we have at least the kosher chaylev against the non-kosher chaylev. We have more kosher chaylev. So it's Mina Torah. We've already sort of removed any possibility of a Torah prohibition in this mental exercise. And now we're not going to say that the fact that there's also some meat there makes it worse. That can only make it better, like we saw in the Rambam. There's more stuff you count against it. But wait a second, the rabbi said you need 60. And then we say, well, do we have 60 here? And what's the answer to that question? Do we have 60 here?
We don't totally know because some of it fell out.
We don't know. Exactly. We don't know. So what's that called? Safek the Rabbanan.
Safek the Rabbanan, that's fine.
Now, in the Doraita realm, we're already kosher, but now we have a Safek the Rabbanan.
Right. And then he's going to explain sort of where he got this idea. So this kind of like inverted case we're in.
Right. So to explain to us this case, this is the case of, if you saw this Gemara, this is Rava in the Gemara. We saw it in the summer, I think. So, Sarah, do you remember this case?
Yeah, I think so. So this is a case where instead of saying basically,
well, which Tana is Rava explaining according to?
Oh, I don't remember. That I'm not going to be able to produce for you. But
it's important. It's Rav Yehuda.
According to Rav Yehuda, right? Because it has to be min b'mino.
According to Rav Yehuda, min b'mino is aser b'mashmu. And therefore, if in our case, you might say that the chaylev met the other chaylev, and it's min b'mino, and it's all aser, and now you need to mevatel all this doubly sized large amount of chaylev, like with only the little bit of meat you got there, and it's aser. What does Rava come and say? Well, what does Rava say?
Says that you can kind of there's no reason it should be worse just because you started with a mixture of two meat.
Right. So which one do you view as Eno?
Mino.
Exactly. You take the Mino now, because he says the Mino is the one that's causing the problem according to Rabbi Yehuda. You take the Mino and you cast it aside mentally, and you say, do I have enough meat against the forbidden chaylev that came in to be batel, well, in something, to be batel? I think it's, maybe it's like Rashi says that it's only rove you need, but perhaps it's only rove you need. But even so, or 60, it could be, it doesn't really matter. The principle is still the same, that as long as you have enough to mevatel the chaylev that came in from with the meat, then the fact that there's also permitted chaylev there is not going to make it any worse. So it's sort of the same exact logic, but in reverse. Now, if you saw the Shulchan Aruch, this came up as a machloket, whether this din, this comparison to Rava's case makes sense. It's a machlokas between the Marshal says that this comparison makes no sense. Can anybody summarize for me why not to make this comparison?
The Shach and the Taz. I believe the Shach says it makes no sense, and the Taz says it does make sense.
Right. But I think the Shach quotes the Marshal.
He does. The Shach says, in the case that Rava is talking about, when we take out Mino, we're still set. The thing that we're doing bittul with, i.e., the she'eno Mino, is the one in which we actually need 60 keneged the tam. In this case, when we're taking out Mino and we're just saying, there's bittul barov, there's still a very live possibility that whatever fell in is going to impart ta'am to the she'eno Mino. And so this is actually practically doesn't necessarily work the same way.
Yeah, you said that right, but you better explain it a little bit better. You mean more? You said that correctly, but it's maybe you could say it more.
Yes, the Shach
more words.
Let's say I have
our case.
Oh yeah.
In the case of greasy or meat and fat.
Yeah.
Start with the case of meat and fat.
Do you mind if I use chicken, nevela, and rotev just to?
Fine. Okay.
Chicken, nevela, and rotev. Nevela chicken. If I just say the nevela.
Wait, and the rotev is kosher?
The rotev's kosher, the chicken's kosher, and then nevela chicken falls in.
Okay.
If I say well, the nevela chicken is batel barov. I'm not sure. There's nishbach. I'm not sure how much there is. The nevela chicken is batel barov. Therefore, I have barov of the chicken. Therefore, now I only have kosher chicken and kosher rotev. The Shach points out, well, actually, how do I know that the nevela chicken has not imparted ta'am to the rotev? In the case that Rava is talking about, I have enough rotev to certainly mavatel the taste of the nevela chicken. So the question of what happens min b'mino doesn't really matter. In this case, I don't necessarily have enough rotev. In fact, I'm specifically ignoring the question of whether I have enough rotev to be mavatel the ta'am of the chicken, but that actually is still an essential question.
And what's the kasha with this problem? What's wrong? Why is he wrong? I'll put it that way. Can you give me a reason why, an argument against him?
I believe the Taz says, well, when we say it's batal barov, what we're saying is we're either acting like or assuming that there actually is shishim. I don't know if that's like a compelling answer, but that would be saying like actually there is enough total material to do bitul on the tam.
Mm-hmm. I have a simpler kasha. I have a simpler kasha on it, which is his problem was that Tom from the let's say from the non-kosher chicken went into the rotev. But you can't prove that to me because there's also a kosher chicken, and that Tom also went in. And so which Tom went in? Well, both of them. Well, I can go by the majority. I mean, unless you're saying in other words, or you can't tell me that there's a Tom of the Isser in there because maybe that's the Tom of the Heter. Wait, Joel wants to say something?
But I'm going to affirm that, I think, in some ways, because the whole reason for that min b'mino is batel barov is because you can't distinguish Tom, right? And so therefore, if you can't distinguish which Tom it is, then you can't claim that it's the Tom of the Isur that is infecting the enomino anywhere over the kosher mean, right? So it makes no, if you're following the whole idea of min b'mino batel barov, it actually makes sense as far as I can tell. So
I think it makes sense. I think that it makes a lot of sense. Right. This is Shach in Chet, where he says that Rava is not applicable here. But I would go with the Taz personally, that the Shulchan Aruch makes sense. So wait, let's look in the time we have left. Maybe Aaron, you want to read just the Shulchan Aruch?
Sure.
We didn't get to. There's a whole discussion about chicken. The final conclusion about chicken is going to be that chicken really is treated like Doraita, because it's not a gezerah on a gezerah, because a gezerah on a gezerah is when you have one gezerah and then a different gezerah that sort of overlap. And then you say, well, then it's like two gezerahs. But here it's just one gezerah that they said chicken is like meat in all ways. All right, but anyway, go ahead with the Seif Bet.
Imitar min b'mino nishbach. בעניין שאין יכולים לעמוד עליו לשערו, אם נודע שהרוב התר מותר, אם לא נודע שהרוב התר אסור.
Right. That's basically straight from the tour.
הגה, ולעניין min b'mino אז לינן בתר שמע. אם הוא שווה, הווה min b'mino, אבל לא אז לינן בתר תמה, אם הוא שווה או לא, which is a crazy thing to say.
It's a crazy thing to say, yes. How can we say, when we say determining what type it is, we've said everything about type is because we're assuming all along that they have the same flavor. And now the Ramah comes and says, but actually to determine what type is type, we go by the name and not by the flavor. So then where do we have a guarantee that the flavors are the same? Maybe they're different flavors, even though it's min b'mino. So it's sort of problematic opinion. Maybe Joel next time, since it is in Gimel, in the Shulchan, we'll see next time, hopefully, if you have time, Joel, in the tour, in the Beit Yosef, on Sif Gimel, he brings a list of all the examples where the Ramah is getting this from. And if you look, and whatever, maybe you'll get a better idea of what he means when you see that list. But yeah, it's a crazy, crazy opinion, but it's not his own opinion. It's not the Ramah's opinion. He's getting it from the Iger, yeah. Okay, Go ahead.
אבל בשאינו מינו ונשפך, בעניין שאין יכולים לעמוד עליו לשער, אפילו נודע שעברו היתר אסר, ואם נתערב מינו ושאינו מינו ונשפך, בעניין שאין יכולים לעמוד עליו לשער, ונודע שעברו היתר ממינו, רואים שאינו מינו כאילו אינו, והשאר מינו רבה עליו ומבטלו. So the same as the Torah.
Wait, so Ray, translate that last part again.
If it's mim she'ena mino and the sum is spilled, so we can't tell how much it was, even if we know that the rov was heter, it's still aser. If it's mim b'mino v'devar acher and some spills out, such that we don't know the exact ratios, but we know that the ratio of the min lamino, there's enough for it to be bitul barov. We don't count the she'eno mino, and there's a bitul barov of the min b'mino.
Right, but of course we have to have a legitimate thought that there was 60 in the min and the me'eno mino against the Isser together. In other words, if we for sure knew that there wasn't 60, then the fact that some of it spilled out is not going to help us. It's only because we have a assumption that there probably was 60 there, and now some of it got spilled out, so we can say, well, suffix, whether we had 60 and the 60 was only the Rabbanan because we had a rov of a mino against it. So anyway, it comes out that we're paskening. It's actually also something else we didn't see, but it comes out that there's 4 cases, right? There's min b'mino, min b'she'eno mino, and well, there's lach b'lach and yavish b'yavish, but so it comes out. We didn't actually see all of that, but it's in the Beit Yosef. Min b'mino is batal barov midoraita, and min b'she'eno mino is batal b'shishi midoraita. You require shishi, and min b'mino you also require 60, but only the Rabbanan. If you have yavish b'yavish and it's min b'mino, then we actually rely on rov and we'd have no gezerah de Rabbanan. But if we have min b'she'eno mino and it's yavish b'yavish, and it's meat and meat, then we have also a gezerah de Rabbanan that we require 60, because shema yivashlena. Maybe you saw that in your reading. Maybe you'll cook it together, and then it'll become like lach b'lach. So basically, if you made a truth table, there's 4 cases. Only in one of them is there an actual bittul barov that we can rely on, and that's yavish b'yavish min b'mino. In all the other cases, you need 60, but in only one of those 3 cases is it 60 deraita, and that's lach b'lach min b'she'eno min. Anyway, the main thing we did today is really understand what the significance of Tam K'Ikkar is, and that Tam K'Ikkar means different things to Rabenu Tam and Rabenu Haim, and that Rambam doesn't hold of Tam K'Ikkar, at least on a deraita level. Anyway, that's very useful to know and very useful for the continuation of our studies. Next time, Joel will do Gimel. Maybe we'll, if you're here, are you here next week?
I am, and maybe we'll do Daled too. We'll talk. You and I will talk.
Yeah, but, maybe we'll do well. Hopefully, we'll do
Daled's a great Seif. So it's that's the Tochev Kaf.
Yeah. Maybe you'll do Daled also. Okay. You should correct everybody.